Going on to the other thing that you mentioned in there about energy efficiency or low effort things. Oh, wow, this is a humongous question.
Quick, throw it in ChatGPT.
Okay, so Jonathan. Oh, geez, I might. Okay, so Jonathan says that they have a health condition. That means that they go through some extremely low physical and mental energy that can last for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to be able to do something in their language,
Yep.
it's because they want to keep their daily habit, even though they can't really put in essentially any effort. Um, they do something like one Anki card is a decent way, I'd like to keep their Anki streak. One Anki
Mm-hmm.
card. Considering that a success. But the real question goes into time efficiency and consistency, because the mental energy that it takes to complete a task is much more important than the time. So the actual like effort is way more important than time, because they could have a whole bunch of extra free time, but they want to just do something successful rather than something for a long time. So it's sort of the going on to this background listening, right? They don't necessarily care if it's 10 hours of time. They want to have a little bit of effort that is actually useful. So what are the best activities in terms of that energy efficiency? So the amount of the amount learned versus mental effort expended. And are
You
they
know where
like?
they are in the process?
I don't see that in here.
Okay.
And side note, I thought that passive immersion might be the solution to this. After trying it, though, I can definitely state that it wasn't, which is funny. So
Yeah, anecdotal reinforcement.
Yeah.
So we actually had a client that was in a very similar situation a couple years ago, where she had a very limited amount of focus time that she could invest before she got like a crazy migraine. So it was always this balance of sort of what is the limitation of what I can do before it starts to impact me, so that I can cut myself off before I get to that point, and then how do I most effectively recover to get back to the place where I can do that, and then what kind of activities actually trigger that migraine. For I believe in her case, reading was more likely to trigger the migraine than listening was.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that where if you have a specific health condition that is limiting your ability, you're going to have to experiment to figure out what it is that what triggers your symptoms, and how to avoid those symptoms from coming on, and preemptively like give yourself rest in order to do them. Without knowing more about your symptoms and your situation, and also where in the process you are, it's kind of hard to give specific recommendations. But I would generally think about, if you're earlier in the process, the biggest challenge is learning vocabulary and basic comprehension of grammar and sentences. So that should be your focus. If you're later on in the process, listening comprehension, and if you're later on even further, then like practicing speaking and writing. So let's assume that you're early on in the process, you're still learning the initial vocabulary, and you're in a position where, let's say, reading is more likely to trigger symptoms than listening. So you're in this in a position where we would normally recommend that you do reading, but in your specific situation, listening is going to be more energy efficient for you. I would generally keep your time focused on things that are relatively achievable. So don't try and go way beyond your ability level. You want to sort of give your brain a little bit of a workout, but not so much that you're really, really struggling. But you definitely want to push yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone each time that you come back to it. And I would definitely emphasize just figuring out how much time you can reasonably do, and really cut yourself off before you go past that. So if your limit is only 15 minutes of focused effort and then you need a break, then actually cut yourself off. Even if you think, no, I think I could do a little bit more, it's actually important to cut yourself off so that you have the opportunity to rest and you can come back to it when you are recovered. So I would say short bursts of high focus with materials that aren't too difficult, and then plenty of opportunity to rest between those short bursts is the sort of general mental model that I would work with, but again, it's very dependent on your specific health concerns and how the exertion of mental energy impacts those health symptoms.
Hmm. Yeah. The other thing I'd add is make sure that when you are feeling good and healthy, to set a realistic plan for those bad days. Right? 'Cause they
Sure.
say here on a bad day, they can do like a maximum of 30 minutes of free flow, maybe 10 minutes of intensive. Um, and so on your good days, figure out something that you can do on a future bad day that is just above your like current level. So you probably have to keep updating this as you get better at the language. But if it's, for example, picking a 30-minute YouTube video that you can learn, like kind of pre-learn the vocab in, and then just watch that free flow on that bad day, that might be a great way to like reinforce the same thing over time. I love having a sick movie. I talked about this before, where I'd
Yeah.
have one movie in check that I can always just load up and watch that I know quite well and get a solid. It's almost a 2 hour movie, but there's technically only an hour and like 20 minutes of dialogue. But like that's a solid chunk of time that I can
Mhm.
just put on and follow and understand, and it's got pretty colors and stuff. So
Yeah, comfort
some.
shows, comfort media is a great way to relax with the language.
Mhm.
And then the other thing I would say is with intensive, if you struggle to do intensive, the way you can make that better is by choosing easier content.
Yep.
Intensive becomes way less intensive and way less difficult when you know 99% of the words.
Just learn one. I mean, if especially on a bad day, it sounds like learning one little thing, feeling good about yourself is what you should be trying to do, rather than trying to be the most amazing, perfect language learner who's learning 10 million words a day or whatever.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, thank you for the question, Jonathan. I hope that's helpful to you.